Supercars are for wimps. Heavy trucks, now that's a real man's dream. Because the global mecha era is coming. Every vehicle under your name will transform into a mecha. Some people own Lamborghinis, which turn into agile high-speed strike mechas. Others have massive heavy-duty trucks, which become indestructible fortress mechas. Even a cement mixer on the side of the road can evolve into some flashy dancing show-off bot. And the rule is simple: the bigger, heavier, and tougher the ride, the more powerful the mecha will be. But in my past life, the only thing I owned was an 18th hand shared bike. A passing mechanical beast crushed me into scrap with one stomp. When I opened my eyes again, I'd actually traveled back to 7 days before the apocalypse. I immediately grabbed my phone to check my balance, and found a whopping $30 in my account. That's not even enough to buy a damn headlight. But then I thought, once the money is just worthless scrap paper. So I opened up every loan app I could find, and started draining them for all they're worth. I absolutely trashed my credit score, going on a wild spree with online loans. I didn't leave a single lending app untouched. I have to do this within 7 days. I need to build an apocalyptic mecha that can crush the wasteland. After a whole night of grinding, my account balance finally hit $20 million. Well, I guess I can kiss my clean record goodbye forever. The next morning, I got up at the crack of dawn and headed to the West Suburb Heavy Machinery Trade Zone. The air was thick with dust and sand, and the sharp smell of diesel was everywhere. Rows of massive steel giants stood there in silence. I whipped out my phone, showed off that $20 million balance, and yelled, "Boss, bring me the most badass beast you've got in this place." Baldy Zhao's face immediately lit up with a greasy grin. He didn't hesitate to sell me the crown jewel of his shop, a 666-ton heavy-duty truck. Little did he know, in my past life those mechanical beasts were 50 tons at most. But one stomp from this massive steel titan, it would probably kick those things straight to the afterlife. I gripped the heavy keys tightly in my hand. Now that I have the truck, the next step is the modification. I drove straight to the city's largest black market chop shop. The screeching brakes kicked up a massive cloud of dust, sending the mechanics sprawling to the ground in terror. Giadele, wearing a grease-stained tank top, was jumpier than anyone else there. "Whoa, buddy, you drunk or something? This is a garage, not a mining site." I didn't feel like wasting my breath on him. I climbed down the ladder and whipped out the folded blueprints. Forget the maintenance, modification only. Weld a container-style living pod on truck bed. Install a heavy-duty V-plow rammer on the front, and cover the whole vehicle in 50mm marine-grade steel plating. Add blast-proof chains to the tires. Start with that. Get it done in 3 days. Damn, bro, you planning to rob a bank or start a war? That's an insane amount of work. $500,000 for labor. Materials are extra. Plus 500 cartons of premium cigarettes. Giadele's breath hitched instantly. 500,000 was 10 years worth of work for him. Boys, get up, we've got a massive job to do. While the workers were hoisting the steel plates, the high-pitched scream of an engine tore through the yard. A red Ferrari SF90 drifted into the lot. Master G stepped out dripping in designer brands and wearing shades. In my past life, he relied on that sports car to mutate into a high-speed mecha. He stole every bit of my food, then tossed a horde of zombies to die. But right now, he clearly didn't recognize me. He slid his sunglasses down, covering his nose with a handkerchief in disgust. "Hey, old Gia, where's my spoiler and nitrous boost? I've got to take first place in the supercar race." Giadele put on a brown-nosing smile. "Master G, it's here. Full carbon fiber just like an F1 racer. I guarantee your car will be light as paper and practically fly," I sneered from the shadows. In my past life, G Boxiao tried to use speed to play games with a heavy-duty mechanical beast, but then a single piece of flying gravel smashed right into his leg joint. It sent his car spinning out of control instantly, and he was trampled into scrap metal by a passing glutton elephant. G Boxiao finally noticed the truck, parked right in the middle of the hangar. He tapped the steel plate with his sunglasses. "Hey, old Sia, since when did you guys start collecting junk?" Then he turned and caught my eye, freezing for a second. "Wait, isn't this that loser Shaolin? What are you buying this crap for? Is driving heavy trucks the new trend for food delivery now?" I just stared at him silently, looking at him like he was already a dead man. That look made G Boxiao feel incredibly uneasy. He reached out to poke my chest, but I caught his hand midair. With a casual flick, I sent him flying 5 meters away, nearly landing him headfirst in a barrel of waste oil. "You're dead meat, kid. Just you wait." Fuming with rage, G Boxiao crawled back into his Ferrari. I watched him strip off the crash bars, replacing them with lighter carbon fiber rods. I couldn't help but laugh, because after the global mecha transformation, the bigger, heavier, and tougher the vehicle, The stronger the transformed mecha, he was making his weaker, while I was making mine a beast. To rush the job, I dropped an extra $200,000 as overtime pay. A solid steel triangular ram was mounted to the front, and the windows were sealed shut with reinforced steel mesh, leaving only 3 narrow slits for visibility. The tires were wrapped in multiple layers of thickened explosion-proof steel chains. The interior was converted into a sealed safe room, with clearly divided storage and living areas. In the early hours of the 3rd day, the prototype of the Fortress Tyrant was finally finished, but there was still one final crucial piece missing to make it perfect. I'm behind the wheel of this steel titan, heading straight for the largest logistics hub. I'm stockpiling 300 tons of diesel, filling every storage tank to the brim. Massive amounts of survival gear are crammed into the storage bays, with only 24 hours until the end of the world. Everyone finally starts to sense the looming disaster. An eerie crimson glow washes over the sky as a high-dimensional energy wave sweeps across the globe. The mechanical sparks are hurtling toward Earth at breakneck speeds. I'm piloting the Fortress Tyrant, slowly making my way to a dead-end bridge. The terrain here is elevated, offering a perfect, unobstructed view. It's the ultimate vantage point, easy to defend, even easier to strike from. Most importantly, it's deserted, with almost zero traffic. The first wave of the apocalypse isn't robotic monsters. It's the very vehicles people use every day. Think about the rush hour traffic. Thousands of cars mutating all at once. That chaos, that's where the real nightmare begins. I park my steel titan at the edge of the broken bridge, nose pointed out, ready to plunge down at a moment's notice, and wait silent transformation to begin. A purple shockwave rips through the sky, and the world erupts in a deafening metallic roar. On the bridge, my black beast completes its evolution. Ding system self-diagnostic complete. Vehicle has evolved into an SG mecha. Fortress Tyrant is online and awaiting your command. A smirk plays across my lips as I slam the gear lever forward. The massive black frame roars to life, charging straight toward that hellish intersection. While on the move, I attempt to link my consciousness with the mecha. It's purely controlled by my thoughts now. Every move the Fortress Tyrant makes feels like an extension of my own body. Suddenly, a red dot flashes on the radar. A mutated bus has its sights set on me. That double-decker has transformed into a massive steel centipede, and it's lunging down the slope like a maniac. The bigger these mutated machines are, the more they hunt their own kind, devouring metal cores just to reach the next stage of evolution. Instead of hitting the brakes, I floored the gas and charged straight ahead. The moment that steel centipede slammed into my front bumper, the massive force of the impact sent it flying through the air, crashing hard onto the pavement. I steered the Fortress Tyrant to roll right over it without mercy. A second later, the system pinged level 1 mutant bus type eliminated. Reward metal origin points acquired. Pathetic, I muttered under my breath. Way too weak. It's about time I pay an old friend a visit. I set the mech's course and headed straight for the city center. There's a little reunion happening down there. Right in the middle of a major intersection stood a 4-meter-tall humanoid mech looking all high and mighty. It was that trust fund brat G Boxiao, the one who used to drive the supercar. The big perk of a supercar type mech is that you get a full humanoid form right from the start. G Boxiao's arrogant voice boomed across the street through his mech's speakers. Now this is what I call real power. The rest of you are just driving piles of scrap metal. You're all as slow as damn snails. His ego was through the roof at that point. Then he suddenly thought of me and started looking around, searching for that black silhouette. And right then, a massive shadow loomed in the distance. G Boxiao's jaw dropped in total shock. Wait, isn't that loser's piece of junk car? How can a hunk of metal that big even move that fast? Jealousy and fear took over and he completely lost his mind. I'm gonna tear you apart. I'll strip your junk and sell it for scrap. He pushed his Crimson Lightning into a full-on charge right at me. He cleared 100 meters in less than 2 seconds. He swung his carbon fiber high-frequency vibration, aiming right for one of my tires. But the second the blade touched the tire, it snapped clean off. The sheer force of the kickback made his mech's entire arm shatter into pieces instantly. Seeing my chance, I drove the Fortress Tyrant straight over his Crimson Lightning. A moment later, that hunk of red scrap metal just got flattened into a thin pancake, stuck deep into the pavement. System notification level 1 mutant sports car type killed. Obtained 1 rare speed module fragment. Right as I crushed that red lightning, 3 mechanical beasts come diving out of the clouds. The concrete floor suddenly splits wide open, and a burrower type bursts out from the dirt. I reach out and slam the red button on the console. The hydraulic system lets out a heavy guttural roar. The camo tarp on the back of the truck gets ripped away. revealing a dual-mounted 30mm automatic cannon. My lips, my eyes burning with pure, unadulterated madness. Time to show these things that caliber is the only justice. The motors for the dual cannons start spinning up, and the air starts to smell like scorched ozone. Those beasts in the sky. They seriously underestimated what this hunk of black steel can do to aircraft. They fold their blade-alike wings, diving straight at me in a tight formation. Their acid sacs slide open, loaded with green corrosive sludge. From inside the cockpit, I've got 3 red crosshairs locked dead on those targets. I give the red trigger a light squeeze, and 200-meter-long snakes of fire erupt from the truck bed. The beast in the lead? Didn't even have time to dodge. It gets shredded mid-air by the shells, turning into a massive fireball. Burning scrap falls like a rain of fire, sizzling as it hits the rusted-out wrecks. I nudge the joystick to keep the lead. The others realize they're in deep trouble. They shriek in terror, trying to pull up and get away. But the tracking speed of my cannons is way beyond their flight limits. The second one catches a burst right in the tail. Its whole lower half just vanishes. It's spinning out of control like a broken kite. I swing the barrels one more time, locking onto the very last one trying to run. Better start trembling, you flying pieces of trash. It spins out of control and slams right through the glass facade of the office building. The third mechanical beast had just barely cracked open its acid tank, when a barrage of shells hits it dead center one after another. The whole thing, acid and all, just goes up in a massive fireball. I take a deep breath, inhaling that sharp, acrid smell of gunpowder. Is there really no one stronger out there? Someone who can actually, make me taste defeat for once? No sooner are the words out of my mouth than a thud echoes from under the chassis. The entire rig actually shudders for a second. The asphalt on the ground starts buckling like a tidal wave. A mutated heavy-duty excavator erupts from the earth in a surprise attack. It tears through the ground, lunging right at my flank. That massive steel maw snaps shut, aiming for my Fortress's rear left tire. But those jagged metal teeth get jammed tight in the armor plating. It can't budge an inch further. The damn thing completely underestimates the weight class it's dealing with. It's desperately pumping its hydraulic arms, trying to flip my rig over. But the Fortress Tyrant, it doesn't move a single millimeter. I'm at the helm, gripping the controls, and I can't help but smirk. Time to show you what industrial-grade power really looks like. The engine roars as I slam it into reverse at full throttle. Those massive wheels start rolling back, grinding everything down. In just 5 seconds flat, mutant is crushed and buried right into the pavement. System alert level 2 engineering class mutant eliminated. Looted high-strength alloy? And 200 origin points. The core has been automatically absorbed. I bring the rig to a halt and shift back into drive. Behind me, there's a crater half a meter deep, and a pile of scrap metal that you can't even recognize anymore. I just shake my head. Honestly, this is getting boring. In this world, the only thing that could even rattle me would be an even bigger steel monster than this one. Too bad nothing like that has shown its face yet. The fight's over, and the intersection goes dead silent. All those low-level mutant cars that were scurrying around just now, they're just huddled on the ground, trembling in fear. I'm not going to waste my time hunting down small fry like them. In this wasteland, killing isn't the point. It's all about the resources. I reach over and hit a switch. A few flexible tentacles slide out from the sides of the hull. I was back at the mud shop when I added this repair claw on a whim. But now it's my most useful tool for scavenging. The arm stabs right into the excavator's wreckage, pulling out a glowing blue core crystal. Right after that, I fish out a crushed speed module from a supercar. I make the Fortress Tyrant devour these cores, and soon a warm surge flows through the chassis. The system says the absorption was a success. Armor strength is up by 0.5%, and I've gained some skill shards. I'll need 10 of these to unlock burst speed. The engine roars back to life, and the black beast grinds over the rubble, heading toward the warehouse district on the edge of town. Out on the main highway, a strange sight starts to unfold. Up at the very front is this massive black mining saw truck. Any junk cars blocking the way, or low-level vehicles get ruthlessly rammed aside, literally carving a path right through the ruins. About 200 meters behind him, a small convoy is following along cautiously. 3 regular cars and 1 small box truck. I spotted them on my radar ages ago, but I didn't bother chasing them off. This early in the apocalypse, people who can read the situation fast and play it smart by riding my coattails are usually the ones who survive the longest. Besides having some cannon fodder behind me, works as a pretty good early warning system. The convoy reaches a large bridge, the only way out of the city. But the entrance is totally blocked off, with a dozen crudely modded pickups and SUVs parked sideways across the road, creating a makeshift barricade. A few guys are standing on the roofs holding shotguns and fire axes. It's only been a few hours since the world went to hell, taking over the main roads, not to stop the mutants, but to prey on their own kind who were trying to flee. Stop! Everyone pull over right now! The leader, a bald guy standing on the roof of a Range Rover, was waving a signal flag around. In their eyes, any vehicle trying to get out of the city had to pay a toll. I couldn't help but laugh at the sight. The apocalypse had only been going for a few hours, and human nature was already showing its darkest side. The small cars behind me were clearly terrified, and some people were even trying to pull a U-turn, seeing that I didn't slow down one bit. Instead, I shifted up a gear and charged straight toward them. The massive black frame of my truck cast a giant shadow under the sun, quickly swallowing up the entire roadblock. That bald guy's arrogant smirk instantly froze. As the distance closed, he finally saw clearly exactly what kind of barreling his way. He dropped the flag and scrambled to get inside the Range Rover. But his men were half a beat too slow. I controlled the massive ram of my mining truck and slammed right into that pile of pickups and off-road vehicles they'd used for the blockade. Before the guy could even get into his car, the massive shockwave sent him flying, and he slammed hard against the guardrail, knocked out cold. In just 3 seconds, the roadblock was completely wiped out, leaving nothing behind but a pile of scrap metal. I didn't even give them a second look, as I drove the Fortress Tyrant straight onto the bridge. Before leaving, I made sure to absorb the cores from those vehicles. A little while later, my truck arrived at a service area plaza. Time to park, organize the cores, and deal with the tails following me. As my truck came to a stop, the convoy behind me slammed on their brakes as well. They pulled over too scared to get any closer. The car doors clicked open, and a few of them stepped out trembling with every step. I used the Fortress Tyrant's onboard system to scan their vitals. Once I confirmed they weren't a threat, I threw on the high-tech suit my rig provided, grabbed my sidearm and hopped out. I looked over the 4 of them and said coldly, "You've been tailing me for a while now. Time to pay up for the gas." I was joking, obviously, but in this kind of atmosphere, it sounded like a direct command from God. The middle-aged man scrambled forward, his voice shaking as he cried out, "Boss, thank you for clearing the way back there. We don't mean any harm. We've got food and water in the car, it's all yours. Please just let us keep following you." A mocking smirk played on my lips. "You think you can even keep up? We'll do whatever it takes." The young girl suddenly blurted out, "I know where you're headed. You're going to set up a base, aren't you?" "I'm a mechanical engineering student. I can fix engines, I can be useful. I can cook." The girl from the young couple piped up, raising her hand. "I'm a doctor, a surgeon." The older woman pulled out her medical ID. "A mechanic, a doctor, and logistics." I raised an eyebrow. Not a bad lineup, even with my invincible mobile fortress. I'm still human, I need to sleep eventually. It would be nice to have some hands to handle the grunt work. I went quiet for a moment, the air in the square feeling like it was freezing over. None of them even dared to breathe. Finally, I lowered my weapon. "If you're coming, don't fall behind. And stay at least 100 meters back from my rig. If you cross that line, you're done for." I pointed toward the wheels, where half of an excavator track was still tangled in the metal. "That's exactly how you'll end up." With that, I climbed back into the cab and slammed her door shut. The survivors down there were so relieved they nearly broke down in tears. In this hellscape crawling with monsters where life is cheap as dirt, latching onto a powerhouse like this on day 1 was a stroke of insane luck. That engineering student, Susu, stared up at the massive black beast. A glimmer of pure fascination flickered in her eyes. Meanwhile, inside the cab, I watched a few green blips pulsing on the radar screen. I leaned back and closed my eyes. Day 1 was a total success. Now it's time to go after the real prize. I pulled a crumpled map out from my jacket. My finger landed right on a spot circled in red. An underground fallout shelter beneath the city. The legendary military stockpile. That's where I'll find the next level upgrade. The reactor core components I desperately need. The western outskirts fallout shelter of Yunhai City. This place used to be a zone, disguised as just another abandoned factory. The heavy chain-link fences were rusted through and choked with thick weeds, but hidden under all that brush was the path leading straight down into the supply vault. I pulled the truck up to a massive, 10-meter-tall concrete blast door. The slab was over half a meter thick. Normally, you'd need high-level electronic keys and a retinal scan just to get it to budge. But after the EMP blast during the collapse, those electronic locks were fried long ago. The door was now a total dead end. The small convoy trailing behind me ground to a halt. Susu, the engineering student, hopped out of her vehicle. She grabbed her toolbox and jogged over to the massive tires of my rig. She craned her neck, staring up at the dark, intimidating cab. She just stood there looking up into that pitch-black cockpit. Susu shouted at the top of her lungs, "Boss, this door is hydraulic-driven and the electronic lock is fried. But I can try jump-starting the backup power, or maybe find the manual release valve." The cab window rolled down just a crack, and my voice came out cold and detached. "Stand back." Just those 2 words. Susu had no choice but to clutch her toolbox and sprint back to the safe zone as fast as her legs could carry her. I stared at that massive slab of a concrete door. The radar showed that right behind it was the main tunnel fortress stretching for 3 kilometers. Ramming mode calibration system confirmed. Hydraulic suspension locked. 100% kinetic energy to the front axle. The monster truck let out a low, predatory growl, backed up 50 meters and then floored it. 666 tons of mass plus over 3,000 horsepower. The very second it slammed into that door, the kinetic energy was unleashed to its absolute. The entire door came crashing down with a deafening roar, sending clouds of dust billowing into the air. As for my fortress on wheels, it barely even took a scratch to the paint on the ram. I stomped on the gas and rolled into the dark, gloomy depths of the underground tunnel. Behind me, the survivors were left standing there, mouths agape. The air in here was thick and stale, reeking of old burnt engine oil. Suddenly on the dashboard radar, a dense cluster of red dots flashed onto the screen. There might not be any zombies down here, but there's something way more annoying. This place was a restricted military zone, packed with heavy-duty automated defense systems. Under the influence of the mechanical sparks radiation, these once lifeless machines had mutated into something else. Up ahead from the ceiling of the tunnel, several automated sentry turrets suddenly swiveled their barrels. Their infrared sensors locked onto the intruder with deadly precision. In a heartbeat, a hail of lead came screaming out. Machine gun bullets rained down like a monsoon, hammering against the mining truck's front armor. If this had been any ordinary vehicle, it would have been turned into Swiss cheese by now. But inside this fortress, faced with heavy-duty steel plates tens of millimeters thick, those bullets, they could only leave behind tiny, faint scratches. I didn't even bat an eye as I activated the secondary weapon system on the roof. Back at the mod shop, I'd had them install a twin-barrel high-pressure water cannon. Only now the tank wasn't filled with water. It was full of used motor oil I'd swiped from a gas station. 2 jet-black streams of oil shot out like venomous snakes, drenching those sentry guns. Then I fired a single flare into the mess, and flames instantly swallowed the entire ceiling. Baked by the roaring fire, those mutated guns, their ammo boxes started to cook off and explode. A series of deafening blasts echoed through the tunnel. Pieces of the guns went flying everywhere as they were torn apart, turning into nothing but piles of scrap metal. Once the path was clear, I kept moving, and the convoy behind me followed along cautiously. Weaving around the still-burning wreckage, Susu and her crew began frantically stripping them for parts. This was exactly why I'd brought them along. I needed a professional logistics team to turn every bit of loot into raw combat power. After passing through the long tunnel, they finally reached the main storage area in the deepest part. The space suddenly opened up before them. It was easily the size of a whole football field, with rows of massive shelves stacked high with dark green wooden crates, firearms ammunition, military rations, even body armor. It was a total goldmine to me. The survivors losing their minds with excitement. Lin Ye was clutching a crate of emergency medical supplies, his hands shaking uncontrollably, but I wasn't interested in any of that stuff. My eyes were locked on the center of the vault, on a separate high-security chamber. Encased in thick lead plates, it was plastered with bright red radiation warning signs. And inside that room, it houses the backup energy core of this entire base. The microfission battery packs. This is some serious high-tech designed to keep the base running for 50 years, even if a nuclear war breaks out. And it's the key to the evolution of the Fortress Tyrant. You guys get moving and load the supplies. Fill up every single truck. Everyone nodded frantically. No one dared to defy the orders of a god of death like me. I steered the mining truck slowly toward that heavy lead door. To open it, you have to turn 2 valves that are 3 meters apart at the exact same time. One person just can't do it alone. Susu, I barked out. The girl who was busy stripping down a heavy machine gun froze for a second, then came sprinting over. Grab the left valve and wait for my signal. And turn. Susu looked at the valve, which was bigger than her own head, took a deep breath, and gripped it with everything she had. 3, 2, 1. Turn. That massive door sealed for decades slowly groaned open under our combined strength. A haunting pale blue light began to bleed through the gap. The vault wasn't huge, maybe just a few dozen square meters, but right there in the center stood a tall cylindrical glass container. Suspended inside were 3 glowing blue metal rods. These are the micro-fission fuel rods. Even through my protective suit, I could feel it. That pulse of energy that makes your heart skip a beat. In this wasteland, energy is split into 3 tiers. 1, fossil fuels like gas and diesel. They're inefficient, loud, and they'll eventually run out. Level 2, electrochemical energy like lithium batteries, and hydrogen fuel quiet, but the range is limited. Then there's level 3 nuclear and high-dimensional energy. This stuff gives you infinite power, and can even run energy shields and beam weapons. Right now, the fortress is still stuck at level 1, and these 3 fuel rods are the keys to reaching level 3. I didn't hesitate for a second. I hopped right back into the truck and manipulated the mechanical arm on the side. I carefully reached out for those 3 fuel rods and gripped them nice and steady. At the very front of the mining rig, the massive intake grill slowly slid open, revealing a bottomless feeding slot deep inside. The arm slid the fuel rods in, and right after that, a terrifying surge of suction from within the truck. Every single gauge on the dashboard redlined instantly. The warm orange light in the cabin snapped into a blinding ghostly blue. The system blared a warning. High-energy reactor components detected. Energy density exceeding limits. Commencing forced assimilation. The truck's frame started shaking violently, and I let out a guttural roar of agony from the cockpit. As the host, I had to tank that massive energy shock myself. But after the pain came the rush of total rebirth. Assimilation complete. Power system upgraded. Hybrid power has been replaced by a micro-nuclear fission drive. Just as the evolution finished, out in the main hall, a blood-curdling scream suddenly rang out. It was the doctor's voice. My eyes snapped open, and I slammed it into reverse, gunning it out of the secret room. I looked out at the warehouse hall, and it had already turned into a total... I don't even know when it happened. But the tunnel entrance we used to get in was now completely sealed off. A literal tide of mechanical rats was pouring out of every ventilation duct and sewer line. They were mutated from vacuum robots, toy cars, and even electric toothbrushes, turning into swarms of deadly micromechs. They're tiny, but they come by the thousands. And right in the middle of that swarm loomed a literal colossus. It was a mutated garbage truck, its back transformed into a massive breeding nest. It was constantly puking out fresh mechanical rats, and its hood was covered in 1,000 glowing eyes. It reeked of a foul green toxic gas. Susu and the doc were backed into a corner, and those scavenged rifles they were holding didn't stand a chance against this endless tide of rats. A few of those metal bastards had already lunged at Susu, their serrated gear away from tearing open her throat. My voice turned ice cold. Perfect. Time to test out the new gear on you freaks. Fortress Online, Sky Curtain Force Field Engage. Power output, 30%. A translucent blue barrier erupted from the truck, blasting outward in every direction. It wasn't some basic shockwave. It was a high-energy ionization field. As the barrier swept through the mechanical rats, it was like flies hitting an electric bug zapper. Hundreds of them, the second they touched the field, had their circuits fried instantly. Smoke poured out of them as they clattered to the ground in heaps. Nothing left but a mountain of scrap metal. That terrifying swarm was wiped out in the blink of an eye. Susu, shaking from the near-death experience, collapsed onto the floor. I locked my sights onto the Rat King. The king was pissed. It let out a screeching metallic roar, its back snapping open amid a stream of corrosive green slime. It came straight for me. I didn't even flinch. I charged head-on right into the filth. The slime hit my blue force field, hissing and sizzling, before it evaporated into thin air. At this point, nothing it did even mattered. He didn't even scratch my paint. This is what it looks like when a level 3 absolutely dominates a level 1. Overload impact. I'm pumping that fresh nuclear energy straight into the power system. At that moment, this 666-ton beast felt like it had finally broken free from the shackles of gravity. In just 2 seconds, its speed skyrocketed to 100 kilometers per hour. In a space this tight, that kind of speed is suicide, but it's also a death sentence for the enemy. With the mining truck's V-shaped ram and carrying a storm of blue energy, I slammed right into the Rat King's chest. The garbage truck's thick armor, when faced with a nuclear-powered impact, was no better than styrofoam. The whole vehicle was pierced and ripped apart in an instant. Before the Rat King could even scream, it was drowned out by a massive explosion. Its core was smashed to bits, with trash and mechanical parts flying everywhere. System notification level 3 mutant scavenger type killed. Biodegradation module acquired. Silence filled the hall, leaving only a floor covered in mechanical rat corpses and the burning wreckage of the garbage truck. I sat in my fortress looking like a god of war as I slowly pulled up in front of Susu and the others. The blue glow gradually faded, The shields dropped, and it turned back into that cold black mining truck. The window rolled down, and I looked at those followers who had been completely scared witless, casually dropping a single command pack up the supplies. And next stop, we're going after the big game, deep in this underground world. I had just completed the most crucial transformation of the apocalypse. From this day forward, I was no longer just a barbarian, relying on pure weight to crush things. I was the Iron Monarch wielding the nuclear storm. When that black beast of a truck rolled out of the bunker, the world outside was already sinking into dusk. The blood-red sunset washed over the ruins, giving the entire city of Linhai a sinister golden edge. Susu, trailing behind, gulped hard, staring at the mining truck ahead with pure awe. Its body, once a dull matte black, was now glowing through the cracks in the armor with a ghostly blue light. It wasn't just some cheap LED strips. It was high-energy particles surging through the pipes, creating the eerie glow of Cherenkov radiation. I flipped on the rear floodlights. The survivors slammed on their brakes immediately, scrambling out of their vehicles in a panic, waiting for the boss's orders. I kicked open the heavy armored door and jumped down, glancing at this pathetic little convoy. One van full of ammo, and 3 cars crammed with food and water. I just shook my head. If a zombie horde hits us, you guys won't last 60 seconds. I pointed to the massive tow hook on the back. That heavy-duty hitch was meant to haul ore trailers weighing hundreds of tons. Susu, there are tank-grade steel cables in the truck bed. Chain all your cars together in a line and hitch them to the back of my rig. This is a brutal tactic. The land train mode, with a 666-ton nuclear beast leading the pack, towing all the smaller cars behind it. This way, you guys won't have to struggle through roadblocks. Even if your engines stall out, the truck will just drag you through by sheer force. Besides, it keeps our defense tight. Under Susu's direction, the men started working drenched in sweat, struggling to haul those heavy steel cables into place. 10 minutes later, a strange-looking convoy has officially taken shape. Leading the pack is a fortress glowing with an eerie blue light. The Tyrant is hauling that van right on its tail, and trailing behind the truck are 3 more private cars. The whole thing looks like a massive serpent made of steel. Roll up all your windows, and whatever you do, don't peek out no matter what you hear, because next we're heading onto the highway, the Linhai City Beltway. This used to be the city's main traffic artery. Now it's nothing but a massive open-air graveyard for cars. Tens of thousands of abandoned wrecks are clogging the lanes, and they stretch as far as the eye can see. If this were any normal person, would have lost all hope the moment they saw this. But I just shift the gears into low-speed cruise. That massive V-shaped ramming prow on the front is like a red-hot knife slicing through butter. Every car and SUV standing in our way gets ruthlessly tossed aside the second we make contact. The screeching sound of mangled metal is deafening. The survivors being towed along in the back stare through the windows at the wreckage flying past them. They can feel the entire frame of the car shaking violently. Their hearts are pounding with pure shock. They don't have to do a single thing, just sit tight, because that God leading the way is carving out a path to survival for all of them. But what he doesn't realize yet is that making this much noise is drawing in the hunters from high above the clouds. I'm sitting in the cockpit, staring at the holographic radar in front of me. A dense cluster of red dots suddenly blips onto the screen. They aren't on the ground. They're in the air. Altitude 300 meters. Dive speed 180 miles per hour. My eyes narrow instantly. In the apocalypse, if you make too much noise on the ground, you're just ringing the dinner bell for the scavengers in the sky. Looking up through the panoramic sunroof, he sees a mass of dark, ominous clouds closing in. But those aren't clouds. That's a swarm of mutated gargoyle drones. These things are monsters born from civilian drones, and mutated raptors fused into a twisted hybrid. Their propellers have turned into razor-sharp bone rotors. Their cameras are now glowing red compound eyes. Mini-bombs are mounted under their chassis, along with lethal grappling hooks. And there are at least 500 of them. Everyone get down and cover your heads! I roar into the radio to the commie. A second later, a black cloud looms overhead, and countless mini-bombs rain down like hail. A single blast might not do much, but this sheer volume is enough to flip a normal car. In the back, a private car's windshield is instantly shattered to pieces. The driver lets out a blood-curdling scream. My fingers dance across the console at lightning speed. Nuclear shield full power, cover the perimeter! That familiar blue light curtain rises once again. But this time, because it's powered by the nuclear reactor. The shield's range expands significantly. A massive hemispherical dome forms, swallowing the entire convoy behind me. Bombs slam against the light shield, erupting into bursts of blue ripples. I let out a cold sneer. Auto defense system active. Targeting all aerial units. Fire mode. Yeah, free fire. The camo tarp at the back of the truck slides off again, as the 2mm autocannon turret raises its head. At the same time, the armor plates on both sides of the hull flip open, revealing 2 rows of phalanx systems. It's the 12-barrel Metal Storm, close-in weapon system I scored on the black market. In this moment, the Beltway Highway turns into a spectacular show of light and sound. The 30mm autocannons are busy picking off the bigger targets one by one. Every single autocannon shell blows a gargoyle right out of the sky. The Metal Storm turrets on either side unleashed a barrage of tens of thousands of rounds every single minute. Tracer rounds wove together in the air, forming an impenetrable net of fire. Those swarms of diving drones looked like they were slamming into a solid wall of flames. It started raining metal from the sky. Countless burning scraps, snapped rotors, and shattered camera pelted the blue energy shield like heavy rain before sliding off to the side of the road. Back in the convoy, Susu was absolutely breathless at the sight before her. As the night fell, that blue shield looked like a piece of the heavens. But outside that shield was nothing but streaks of fire and explosions. That massive black mining truck stood there like a towering fortress, right at the heart of all that destruction, screaming its mechanical fury at the world. To her eyes as a mechanic, she didn't just see a slaughter. She saw the pure raw beauty of energy in motion. When the drone swarm realized they couldn't break through, they finally scattered. But then from deep within the clouds, a massive shadow began to slowly descend. It was an Iron Wing Owl, a Lord-class monster, a freakish hybrid of an attack helicopter, and a giant eagle. Its wingspan stretched over 20 meters wide, and those old transformed into colossal wings. Right underneath its nose hung actual aircraft cannons and rocket pods. It was the absolute ruler of these skies. It slammed down onto the highway gantry up ahead, its massive claws sinking deep into the concrete beams. Those glowing red electronic eyes were locked onto my truck with a deadly stare. Without wasting a second, the Lord-class beast fired off 2 rockets. They slammed into the energy shield, making the blue light vibrate violently. Alarms started screaming warning. Shield energy has dropped to 70%. High energy impact detected. I narrowed my eyes. Okay, things were getting interesting. Finally, someone who can actually put a scratch on me. But I didn't sweat it for a single second. I yanked the steering wheel hard. The mining truck didn't lose an ounce of speed. Instead, I used the rocks on the slope for leverage and gunned it straight toward that gantry crane. Vulture Overlord was locking on with its second round of rockets. That's when I slammed my thumb down on the red button. Overload impact. This time, I funneled all the nuclear energy into the weapon on the roof, or the high-pressure oil cannon. A massive stream of fuel mixed with lethal radiation. I shot out like a blue fire dragon. It doused the Vulture Overlord with pinpoint precision. Then I followed up with an incendiary round to seal the deal. The Vulture Overlord instantly erupted into a massive ball of fire. The highly flammable jet fuel ignited instantly. Combined with the insane heat of the nuclear core, its metallic feathers began to liquefy. It let out a blood-curdling screech trying to scramble into the air. I just scoffed Metal Storm. Focus all fire on the wing joints. Every single gun barrel snapped toward the target. All that firepower converged on a single point. The Vulture's left wing was literally sawed off by thousands of rounds of lead. Its massive body lost all balance. It came crashing down like a fallen meteorite. It slammed onto the highway with a deafening thud, right in the path of my mining truck. See ya. No mercy, not even a little. I drove my 666-ton Fortress Tyrant straight over that burning monster's carcass. Even the armor on an attack helicopter gets flattened into a pancake under hundreds of tons of steel. The fight was over. Every living thing in a 5-kilometer radius was wiped out. And after that, not a single bird dared to fly through this zone again. The convoy kept rolling. Finally, as the clock hit midnight, finally reached our destination, the Linhai International Expo Center. The terrain here is wide and open. It's surrounded by high, sturdy walls, and the main structure is built with a massive steam. These exhibition halls are just perfect to be converted into a true doomsday fortress. But the best part, the underground parking lot is absolutely massive. More than enough room to hide this monster of a mining truck. We're here. I pull the rig right into the middle of the expo plaza. The smaller cars behind me come to a halt as well. Everyone swings their doors open and steps out on shaky, jelly-like legs. I hop down from the cab, cracking open a cold drink. We're setting up camp here tonight. I point toward the massive hall. Susu, Take a team and check the backup generators. If anything's busted, get it running again. Doc, go scavenge for any medical supplies inside. And set up a quarantine zone. The rest of you circle the vehicles. Form a defensive perimeter right now. Everyone jumps into action immediately. Not a single word of complaint. I climb up a very top of the mining truck, looking out over the pitch-black ruins of the city. Distant fires light up the sky. I can faintly hear the echoes of people screaming. But beneath my feet is an invincible stronghold, and a crew that's finally starting to follow me to the death. Now it's time to let this city know exactly who the new boss is. Inside that massive expo center, my Fortress Tyrant is like a beating heart. A ghostly blue Cherenkov glow shines through the glass walls, up into the blackness of the night sky. It throws a strange, eerie pillar of light. To the survivors, it's a beacon of hope. But to the raiders out there, it's just the smell of fresh prey. 3 days have gone by since then. I haven't been sitting around for the past 3 days. Susu took a few survivors who were good with a wrench and gave the Fortress Tyrant a full tune-up. Meanwhile, the doctor set up a pretty hospital. The whole crew went from being a bunch of scared rookies to a precision-tuned machine. But that peace was shattered on the morning of day 4. Tiny pebbles on the ground began to bounce rhythmically, and ripples started forming in the water cups. This isn't an earthquake. My eyes snapped open. My gut told me something was coming from the distance. The low, heavy thrum of a massive fleet of diesel engines. I scrambled into the cockpit and checked the radar alerts. Large-scale armed convoy detected. Hostiles identified. Count is over 50. The flagship's energy signature is off the charts. Out on the edge of the horizon, a massive cloud of dust kicked up into the sky. A massive, suffocating line of vehicles was bearing down on the convention center. These aren't just some zombie cars. They're custom-built war machines. All of them are heavy pickups turned into off-road beasts. They're armored trucks, reinforced with welded steel plates. They're decked out in skull emblems, with heavy machine guns mounted on every roof, or even homemade rocket launchers. And right in the middle of the pack was a total behemoth, a literal land cruiser, built from an extra-long, heavy-duty flatbed trailer. It didn't just have a 3-story command tower on top. It even had a massive crane arm. The sides were draped in, scrap tires to serve as makeshift armor. That's the Skull Legion, the biggest raider gang in Linhai City. Word is, their leader, the Butcher, lives to hunt down mutant vehicles, ripping out their cores and stealing every drop of fuel. They've got the main gate completely blocked off. High up on that Land Cruiser, a massive loudspeaker lets out a bone-chilling screech. I'm the lieutenant of the Skeleton Legion, and I've got my eyes on that glowing blue ride of yours car. And the energy core inside. The men can piss off, but the women, they're staying with us. Talk about pure unadulterated arrogance. But in this wasteland, as long as your cannons are big enough, you've got the right to be a cocky bastard. With dozens of armored rigs, the Skeleton Legion could easily steamroll any small-time shelter. Inside the convention center, it's dead quiet. Every single eye is fixed on that silent black beast in the middle of the plaza. Sitting in the cockpit, I just smirked. That's my heart you're talking about. If you're coming for my life, then I'm damn sure coming for yours. I slammed the megaphone button, and my voice boomed across the entire battlefield. Get lost. Just 2 simple words. The raiders outside froze for a split second. Then they absolutely lost it, howling with laughter. Fine, have it the hard way then. Boys, level this place to the ground. Command. Dozens of rockets ignite trailing streaks of flame, like a rain of liquid fire, slamming right into the convention center's glass walls. The glass shatters. Shards falling like rain. All hell is broken loose. Fortress initiate total lockdown mode. Command confirmed. Reactor output at 120%. Deflector fields active. Shields at full power. I wasn't hiding behind any cover. That massive black mining truck actually smashed right through the main glass entrance of the hall, charging into the plaza like a tiger unleashed from its cage. A blue energy shield shimmered with a blinding light under the sun. A hail of bullets and rockets slammed into the shield, but they only caused faint ripples, failing to leave even a single scratch on the hull. The raiders were absolutely stunned. They'd seen heavy armor before, but never one with its own energy shield. Fire! I gave the order coldly. This time it wasn't just the 30mm autocannons. On both sides of the truck's body, 2 massive missile launchers suddenly deployed. Those were what I'd scavenged when I cleared out the armory. Individual thermobaric rounds. Susu had modified them into a vehicle-mounted multi-launcher. 24 thermobaric rockets screeched through the air, blanketing the front line of the raider convoy. A white mist instantly swallowed over a dozen pickups, and then they were detonated. In an instant, those dozen-plus vehicles were turned into scrap metal. Round 1, a total victory. The destruction of their vanguard didn't scare off the skeleton army. Instead, it only fueled their bloodlust. That massive Land Cruiser finally started to move, barreling forward like a derailed train as it thundered into the plaza. Its weapon wasn't a cannon, but a gargantuan crane arm with a 10-ton electromagnetic suction cup. It was built specifically to capture mutant vehicles. Powerful electromagnetic waves instantly washed over my truck. If this were any ordinary mutant vehicle, the electronics would have been fried by now. But the Fortress Tyrant has a nuclear-powered shield, and the electromagnetic waves were completely blocked out. I watched that massive crane arm reaching toward me, a look of pure contempt flashing in my eyes. Trying to outmuscle me, you're asking for death. I slammed it into low-range 4-wheel drive and activated overload impact. Full power, the truck didn't back down, it charged right ahead. Head on straight toward that Land Cruiser twice its own length. It slammed right into the beast. This wasn't just a metal-on-metal collision. It was a clash of two different eras. On one side, the diesel-burning overlord of the old world. On the other, the nuclear tyrant of the new age. A world-shaking boom erupted. As the two behemoths collided, the earth itself began to tremble, and the concrete plaza shattered in an instant. The moment they made contact, the cruiser's front end was crushed like a tin can. But thanks to its massive frame and the grip of its 20 wheels, it actually managed to hold its ground against the mining truck's charge. The two giants locked horns in the center of the square. Their engines let out a gut-wrenching roar as black smoke tangled with pulses of blue light. High up on the cruiser's bridge, that brute the butcher was howling like a maniac. A massive electromagnetic grapple slammed down hard onto the mining truck's shield, trying to crush it under pure physical weight. Warning shield overload, energy output unstable. Red lights started flashing all over the cockpit, but I stayed chillingly calm. Susu, blow it now, spoke into the comms, barked out a command that seemed to make no sense. But it turned out that during the crash, a remote-controlled toy car Susu was piloting had already slipped right under the cruiser's chassis. Main fuel tank, bye-bye. An explosion suddenly ripped through the cruiser's underbelly. While it wasn't enough to take down the whole thing, it snapped the main drive shaft and turned the fuel tank into an inferno. The fire spiraled out of control in seconds, and that was the opening I needed. Seizing that moment of hesitation, I triggered the nuclear pulse. All the energy that had been holding the shield was compressed backward in a heartbeat, releasing a world-ending shockwave. Then it erupted through the micro-ram. A visible blue shockwave, ripping right through the hull of that Land Cruiser. That arrogant mobile fortress started falling apart right down the middle, its massive frame snapping. The tower came crashing down. I stayed on the gas and crushed it with my mining truck. Those massive industrial tires crawled right over the wreckage of the cruiser. And just like that, this moving fortress and the ego inside it were ground into the dirt. With the cruiser in pieces, the remaining raiders completely lost their nerve. They ditched their gear, fleeing in every direction in whatever beat-up cars they had left. I sat there at the top of the burning heap, looking down over the battlefield. After this one fight, within a 100-mile radius, no one would ever dare mess with this exhibition center again. Susu and the doc led the others out from the bunkers. Everyone was cheering as they crowded around the truck. Looking up at that massive black beast standing tall in the ruins, they looked at the man in the driver's seat like he was some kind of god. In that moment, they weren't just survivors anymore. They were the Snoo King. The day after the battle, the exhibition center looked like a whole new place. I didn't give anyone a break. Instead, we went into a construction frenzy. That wrecked Land Cruiser might be toast, but it left behind tons of steel plating, weapons, and supplies. Susu directed the workers to strip the steel plates off the wreckage, welding them onto our perimeter walls to build a literal Great Wall of Steel. The doc organized the meds the raiders left behind, setting up a field hospital capable of performing full surgeries. And then I made a decision that shocked everyone. He parked the Fortress Tyrant right in the center of the exhibition hall. Then he hooked up a set of heavy-duty power cables, switching to core functional mode. The micro-nuclear reactor inside the mining truck began surging power to the entire base. Lights flickered on, the AC started humming, and the water purification kicked in. Even the massive screen on top of the pavilion lit up with a brilliant glow. In this dark, dead silence of the apocalypse, this convention center became a city that never sleeps. It was no longer just a temporary hideout. It was Tyrant City. 1 month later, the scale of Tyrant City had already doubled. Nearby survivors flocked here seeking protection. I established a strict hierarchy. To enter the city, you must pay in metal or cores. To eat, you must work. I'm no longer that car salesman who's stressed over loans for hundreds of thousands of dollars. I am the lord of this city, and the one and only God. Right now, he's standing on the roof of the center, gazing out at the distant horizon. Beside him sits the newly upgraded Fortress Tyrant. Now it's been equipped with electromagnetic cannons, stripped from a Land Cruiser. It even has partial transformation capabilities. Turn into a fixed turret bunker. Boss! Radar's picking up weird energy spikes at the shore. Susu rushed over with a tablet, her face pale with worry. The energy reading? It's 10 times higher than ours. I grabbed the tablet and saw a massive red shadow on the screen, slowly rising from the ocean depths. That's no vehicle. That's an aircraft carrier. A mutated, limbed, tentacle-covered aircraft carrier mecha beast. The Leviathan S7. And further inland, the legendary mechanical emperor is amassing his forces. Dark clouds are closing in. I stare at that red dot. There's no fear in my eyes. Only a wilder, more desperate urge to fight. I pat the armor of the mining truck beside me. Looks like this isn't the end of the road yet. Our journey is just getting started. On the tablet in Susu's hands, a red shadow is closing in fast enough to see with the movement of that massive behemoth along the coast is kicking up waves several meters high. The salty sea breeze, thick with the scent of rusted metal, sweeps through every corner of Tyrant City. I'm standing on the roof of the convention center. My fingers brush against the fortress, watching the eerie blue glow pulse across the Tyrant armor. Behind me, the steel city is ablaze with lights. High up on the walls, the heavy machine gun nests are already locked and loaded. Susu's custom-built rocket launchers are aimed straight at the sea. The doc and the medical team have set up a makeshift field hospital below the walls. Thousands of survivors stand ready with their weapons, determination etched in their eyes. This isn't just my fight anymore. This is a war for the very soul of Tyrant City. Boss, the Leviathan is only 10 kilometers from the port. It's launched the first wave of mutated aircraft. There are more 100 of them. Susu's voice crackles over the radio, sounding urgent yet incredibly steady. I look up at the horizon, and there they are, a swarm of black dots. What used to be airliners and fighter jets have been twisted into hideous machines of death, with mutated armor-piercing rounds strapped under their wings. They roar as they dive straight for Tyrant City. Fortress initiate full-scale defense. Metal Storm intercept those aerial targets. Rockets rain hell on the preset coordinates. I dived straight into the cockpit. The heavy armored door slams shut with a bang, and the holographic console instantly flares to life. A massive flood of data rushes into my mind, and the blue deflector field flares to life once again. This time, the shield spans across the entirety of Tyrant City. Meanwhile, the Fortress Tyrant's twin autocannons open fire alongside the Metal Storm, weave an impenetrable web of fire in the sky. And before the first wave of carrier-born mutants can even reach the walls, they're falling as nothing but burning wreckage. But the real threat has only just arrived. The sea begins to boil violently, and a behemoth as massive as a mountain slowly rises from the surface. Its dark gray armor is covered in barnacles and thick layers of rust. The original carrier deck is split with countless fissures, with dense mechanical tentacles surging out from within. Every single tentacle is lined with razor-sharp alloy blades. At the edge of the deck, dozens of even larger carrier mechs are primed and ready for action. The Leviathan lets out a deafening, earth-shaking roar. The sound waves turn into invisible shockwaves, causing the steel walls of Tyrant City to tremble. Everyone fall back to the second line of defense. Susu, activate the remote Mecha army. I slam the control lever forward, and the Fortress Tyrant bolts from the city gates like an arrow. The nuclear engine erupts with a blinding blue light. The thermobaric launchers on both sides are reloaded, their warheads surging with nuclear particles. The Leviathan's tentacles strike first, dozens of massive steel limbs sweeping toward us. Wherever they pass, giant waves surge from the sea, and reefs are crushed into fine dust. I force the Fortress Tyrant to leap high, the hydraulic suspension instantly jacking up the chassis. At the same time, I slam the fire button for the nuclear hand cannon. A single blue beam of light several meters wide from the front ramming horn erupts outward, scoring a direct hit on the leading tentacle. A violent explosion blows the tentacle into smithereens. Metal shards are raining down like a goddamn storm. But those Leviathan tentacles just keep... New mechanical limbs are bursting out of the severed stumps already. And now their carrier mechs are launching from the deck. They're swarming the Fortress Tyrant from every angle. Boss, I'll draw their fire. Susu's voice cracks through the comms. Suddenly over a dozen remote-controlled mechs made from scrap cars come charging out from the city ruins. They might be tiny, but they're packed with EMP jammers. They dive into the carrier mechs like a swarm of angry hornets and detonate their jamming charges in a flash. The enemy's navigation systems go haywire, and they start dropping out of the sky left and right. Susu doesn't miss a beat. She's piloting a modded construction rig, sneaking around to the Leviathan's blind spot. She slaps a custom-made EMP charge right onto a gap in its heavy plating. "Blow it!" I scream. I floor it in the Fortress Tyrant. Straight Leviathan's core. The EMP goes off with a deafening blast. A massive blue pulse of energy rips through the Leviathan's entire frame. Its tentacles suddenly go limp, and their backup units are stuck on the deck. This is the opening I've been waiting for. The Tyrant's electromagnetic boom arms swing wide, grabbing the Leviathan by its own deck rails. I'm literally dragging that massive beast toward the shore. 666 tons of steel slam into the Leviathan. The whole damn world starts to shake. The concrete at the docks is splitting wide open under the pressure. Just as I'm about to reach the reactor room, the Leviathan suddenly snaps back to life. It unhinges its massive mechanical jaws and spits out a stream of glowing green acid. This stuff is even more deadly than what the Rat King used against us. As it hits my blue deflector shield, it starts sizzling through. My energy levels are plummeting. Shield energy is down to 30%, and the system alarms are screaming. I grit my teeth and crank the nuclear output to 150%. From the gaps in the Fortress Tyrant's armor, a blinding blue light begins to pour out, flickering like a raging wildfire. Overload impact. Nuclear fission. I slammed my fist down on the final red button. This is the Fortress Tyrant's ultimate move. It compresses the entire energy output of the micronuclear reactor, focusing every single drop into the ramming prow. Using its own chassis as the weapon, it launches a devastating all-or-nothing suicide charge. The Fortress Tyrant streaks forward like a blue meteor, slamming straight into the Leviathan's reactor bay. Under the sheer force of the nuclear impact, that heavy carrier armor is shredded like a piece of thin paper. A massive from the breach echoes through the heavens and earth. A mushroom cloud towers over the coastline. Colossal waves surge, and as the smoke finally clears, the Leviathan lies there completely paralyzed. Its reactor bay has been totally obliterated. Deep blue energy leaks from the wreckage, quickly being swallowed and diluted by the seawater. I pilot the Fortress Tyrant as it crawls out from the ruins. The mech's armor is spiderwebbed with cracks. My energy levels are down to a mere 10%. But inside the cockpit, a smirk finally plays across my lips. Right at that moment, an urgent, frantic voice crackles over the radio. "Boss, we've got a massive mechanical swarm detected coming from inland. It's the Machine Emperor's main army, and they're only 50 kilometers away from our position." I look up toward the horizon. A massive sandstorm is being kicked up against the sky. A literal flood of mutated mechs is close fast. And at the very front of that mechanical tide, a 100-meter-tall colossus looms over the battlefield. That is the Machine Emperor. His massive hulking frame is a patchwork of countless scrapped vehicles and mechanical cores, all welded together into a nightmare. For a head, he has one single giant electronic eye, glowing with a cold, predatory red light. Countless mecha tendrils swirled around his body, each one armed with a different deadly weapon. All units fall in. I bark the order into the comms, my voice heavy. Susu reroute all core energy into the Fortress Tyrant. Doc, get the wounded back behind the city walls. The rest of you on your mechs were moving out. At this moment, Tyrant City was no longer just a defensive bunker. It was an active war zone. Susu and her tech team rushed over in an instant, taking every metal core we'd scavenged, and plugging the impulse directly into the Fortress Tyrant's main port. A surge of neon blue energy exploded outward, the cracks in the armor sealing shut. As new layers of heavy plating grew before our eyes, this was the Fortress Tyrant's final form. A perfect machine fused with every mutant core we had. It boasted an infinite nuclear drive, and a multi-mode combat system that could shift on the fly. As the Machine Emperor's army reached the gates, I was there in the pilot seat of that ultimate beast, standing at the very vanguard. Behind me stood a legion of survivors in their custom mechs. The Machine Emperor's voice rang out cold and robotic. "Purge the defectives. Unify the machine era." The second those words dropped, he lashed out with his mechanical tentacles. A hail of shells and lasers tore through the air, but I triggered the Fortress Tyrant's transformation, shifting the massive frame into a heavy turret. The twin 30mm cannons evolved into a 120mm nuclear main gun. At the same time, the Metal Storm defense system went live, shredding every incoming projectile into dust. Attack! With one command, the mech legion behind me surged forward like a tidal wave. Susu led the charge in her custom engineering rig, ripping the core components right out of the enemy droids. Meanwhile, the Doc was in the medical mech, weaving through the chaos of the battlefield to pull our people back from the brink. I'm piloting the Fortress Tyrant, charging straight for the Machine Emperor. This ultimate form's speed is on a whole different level than before. In a flash, I'm right in his face. My electromagnetic arm grabs one of his tentacles, and I rip it clean off. At the same time, my nuclear cannon hits him dead in the electronic eye. The Machine Emperor lets out a furious metallic roar. His mechanicals go wild, flailing everywhere in a frenzy. He's knocking away every mecha in sight. I spot his core, it's right in the center of his chest. But it's shielded by thick layers of alloy plating. Normal attacks won't even leave a scratch on that thing. Susu, find a weak spot in that armor now. On it, boss. Boss, there's a gap in the armor on his back. That's the main channel for his energy transmission. Susu's voice cuts through the chaos just in time. She instantly uploads the exact coordinates, straight to my holographic control panel. I force the Fortress Tyrant into a massive leap, barely dodging those deadly tentacle swings. I trigger the burst thrusters for a surge of speed, and boom, I'm right behind him. The electromagnetic arm shifts into a razor-sharp alloy blade. I drive it deep into the gap in his armor. Then I flood his system with pure nuclear energy. The Emperor's massive body begins to convulse. The red light in his eye starts to flicker and die out. The core energy is leaking. It's about to blow. Everyone get out of here, fall back now. I scream the order into the comms, while pushing the Tyrant to its limits to get clear. A massive explosion rocks the entire wasteland. The Machine Emperor is literally blown to pieces. His core energy erupts into a sky full of brilliant blue light. It rains down across the desolate earth. All those mechanical mutants lose their signal. They're collapsing to the ground one by one. As the smoke and dust finally start to clear, those ominous red clouds in the sky begin to fade away. Real sunlight finally breaks through the gloom, shining down on this war-torn, battered land. Ever since the apocalypse began, this is the first time we've seen the sun shine this bright. A new era full of hope is finally starting to dawn. 3 months later, Tyrant City was officially Dawn City. It's become the hub for all of Seaside City and the surrounding lands. The largest survivor base in existence. New homes have been built within those massive steel walls, along with thriving farms and factories. Every survivor has found their place and a purpose. And the children, they're finally running and playing in the sun again. Susu established the Mechanical Research Center. They've been focusing entirely on the mechanical cores, working to use them for the good of humanity. Meanwhile, the doctor set up a complete medical system, saving the lives of countless injured survivors. I'm standing at the highest point of Dawn City. Beside me, the Fortress Tyrant has finally found peace. Its deep blue glow has softened. It's no longer just a war machine built for slaughter. It's a partner guarding our home. Out by the distant shore, the Leviathan's wreckage was transformed into a harbor. There are docking there every single day, bringing in vital supplies and more survivors. Further inland, the remains of the Machine Emperor are being stripped down for raw materials. All of it is being used to keep building the city. Susu walks up to me holding a new report. She's got a huge smile on her face. Boss, we did it. We successfully used the mechanical core to develop a source of clean energy. From now on, Dawn City will never have to worry about power ever again. I take the report from her, scanning through the data. I feel this incredible sense of relief wash over me. Back when all this started just to stay alive, I trashed my credit. I maxed out every loan I could get my hands on. I bought that heavy truck, all just for a tiny chance at surviving the end of the world. But now, I'm not just a lone survivor fighting a solitary war anymore. I'm the lord of this city, protecting lives. As the sun begins to set, the golden light of the evening spreads across every single corner of Dawn City. The light washed over me and the Fortress Tyrant alike, out across the distant sea. Seagulls soar through the sky, leaving their sharp, clear cries echoing behind. The agony of the apocalypse is finally over, and the hope of rebirth is taking root in this land. I know this isn't the end. It's just the start of something new. Side by side with every soul in Dawn City, I will guard this hard-won peace with everything I have, letting our steel and our blood forge an eternal